Time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
They're a complete team. They hit over 300 as a team. They steal a lot of bases. They field at a 981 clip, which is elite level. They're pitching under 3.5 at this point. So it's a complete team. You have to play really good baseball to beat them. So we're going to have to be at our best. I'm sure they'll be at their best, and it'll be a great SEC baseball series.
The big difference in the last 2 weekends, outside of our pitching and defense, is we've been able to score runs without taking advantage of the free pass. We have to be able to continue to do that against Florida State. Florida State leads the conference in strikeouts, I believe. So they've got some power arms. There's going to be some swinging and missing because they've got good stuff. But we've got to be able to hit our way on base.
And a pleasant good afternoon to you and yours, and welcome into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on this Friday, May the 4th. Be with you, 2018. Hope you're enjoying yourself today. Along with producer Brian Leonard and the Professor Tom Hayes, I'm Will Pelagic. Phil Kornbluth has the afternoon off as the weekend starts early for him, and it starts early for South Carolina as they have a statement series here against Ole Miss, the number 4 team in the country. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Clemson's series against Florida State, statement series for them as well. We did just get some news out about Clemson and the Gamecocks, their players who are testing the waters for the NBA draft. Only one of them receives an invite to the NBA draft combine. Lots to get to today. Mike Morgan on the move. His weekly appearance with us will take place coming up here at the bottom of this hour, about 20 minutes from now. We're going to hear from George Bryan III on the golf, Monty Dutton on the NASCAR. Howie Lindsay will continue our recap of spring football across the ACC and SEC by taking a look at what's going on in Louisville, and maybe I can try and see if we can squeeze in a derby pick from him as well, too, as, of course, that is of prime concert going on right now in the city of Louisville. Telephone number to get in touch with us, 800-956-7266 is how you get in touch with us. Email talkback at SportsTalkSC, Twitter at SportsTalkSC, as well as on Periscope where you can watch our video feeds there. Let's start with the baseball just because it is top of mind. And, you know, from South Carolina's perspective, the simple fact is this is a must-win series. I think that the only way to prove that the last 2 weeks are not a fluke for them is to go out and win this series. If you lose the series or if you get swept, I think it provides a detrimental just knife into the heart of any postseason plans, independent of what you can do in Hoover. But the fact of the matter is, in my mind, this is South Carolina's last chance to really make a statement to the country right now.
Well, you know, nothing is actualized. You can first visualize it, if I may put it that way. And I think this South Carolina team now has a little mojo going. I don't even think they're thinking about being swept. The interesting thing about Ole Miss is they started off like a house of fire, but if you look at their record, South Carolina's only a game out from Ole Miss. So Ole Miss made some noise very early in the campaign, but South Carolina has what it takes, I think, being at home. And let's face it, baseball coaches and players seem to show some tremendous intensity as soon as those exams are over. And the only thing they have to think about is baseball. And I think, if anything, the most interesting thing about this is the fact that I want to see how the crowd reacts tonight.
That's the thing I think that needs to show up in earnest. There needs to be 82-42 there for the entire weekend. And Mark Kingston said that. I'm not trying to say that to sound like a cheerleader or a pom-pom holder or something like that. If there was any time to try and buy into this baseball team in South Carolina, it is this weekend, because the weather is supposed to be brilliant. It's supposed to be in the 80s and 90s all weekend. I know that the rain is there's a little bit of chance of rain on Sunday, but it should hold off for all 3 games to get in this weekend. And the one thing I think that needs to happen, that has not happened yet, there needs to be an acceptance of Mark Kingston into this baseball program. I think it needs to happen this weekend.
Yeah, I think it already has, quite frankly, because I think the Houdini act that he pulled when he had so many injuries and guys playing out of position, especially defensively and holding it together. And this team still is solid defensively, and making a weird move with the pitching rotation and finding it working. So he's pushed some right buttons as far as his first year coaching here. As my late uncle used to tell me when he looked at college baseball, he said, now this is a big series. They need to have the necessity of bringing folding chairs out there to bring as many people in as possible. So, yeah, I think South Carolina, I think the crowd would be interested tonight, because I think this is when the crowd has to show some of the fervor they had during their championship year.
They certainly do. When you think about what Ole Miss has done over the last couple of series, you know, they started April with a series loss to Mississippi State, then went on the road at Vanderbilt and lost 2 of 3. Part of that was a Sun doubleheader, which had 2 games that were shortened to 7 innings apiece. They had won a 2 out of 3 series over Georgia. They did the same at home over LSU. They've struggled away from home. That's where it's kind of been their bugaboo. They did get a series win at Texas A&M. That's really their only series win away from home. So if there's one thing that there's their Achilles heel, it's that they cannot play very well away from Oxford. And they go into Founders Park here with the Gamecocks playing like a desperate team, but also showing some of their mettle. Conversely, Clemson has taken advantage of some slippage by their counterparts in the ACC. They were in second place going into the week last week to NC State. NC State gets swept by North Carolina. Clemson sweeps Virginia. And now you're looking at Clemson ranked as high as 6th, 17-7 in the ACC, and now really on the top half of the hosting teams right now projected amongst those in the NCAA tournament. This Florida State team always has prosperity in their minds and in their grasp, even though 13-10 is not what you would expect a Mike Martin club to look like. This is something for the Seminoles to really show that they belong in the conversation of those teams in a down ACC to be in the tournament. Whereas for Clemson, this is, again, their opportunity to prove that they belong among the big boys.
Yeah, of course. I think the team has some extra oomph as far as the Seminoles are concerned, because isn't Mike Martin right now in a flat foot tie with Augie Garrido for most wins in college baseball?
They're right there, yeah.
1975. Unbelievable. And this is a team, let's face it, both teams I think are in that mold right now, that they have to play the best baseball they possibly can, because not only are they playing just to win, but also playing to make sure they get that home field, and not only for just a regional, but hopefully they get one of those national seeds. And Clemson is right there in the front door of getting that, where they could have their super regional at home.
Yeah, the one win away is Mike Martin from the all-time win record in NCAA history. Again, if they get a win over Clemson this weekend, there'll certainly be a lot of celebrating for him. But, you know, conversely for Clemson, they're going to have to overcome a little bit of adversity. It looks like Keir Meredith might be out of the lineup once again for them this weekend. That's a real big loss at the top of the lineup. They've had to weather that loss all throughout the season. Sam Hall has stepped up in his space, not necessarily as a leadoff hitter, but he has carried his own weight. The one thing, though, for Clemson, in my mind, is they need to get better starting pitching. They have not shown consistency from the starters. Jacob Hennessy is a guy who I think, as a number one, has really struggled in my mind. I've yet to see him throw what I would consider to be the representative kind of outing that can carry a rotation. They need that, because they have a very deep bullpen, but as you go throughout the season, it's going to get taxed, and it's going to get taxed very, very hard.
Yeah, but one of the things they have to do is get ahead in the count. I've always said that it's amazing from the hitter's standpoint and to the pitcher's advantage is when you get ahead in the count, then you can expand the strike zone. That means you can throw it any way you want to, and they may swing at bad pitches. One of the things I think probably is something out of the pitcher's control as far as Clemson is concerned. Clemson has an explosive offense. So I think teams come in to Doug Kingsmore Stadium or play Clemson anywhere and thinking they got to score some runs. So
they ambush pitchers.
Yeah, so Clemson's pitchers, you know, they have that kind of yoke on their back of having a team with an explosive offense, and you're going to get the best hitting from the other team as possible.
We'll continue to look at the baseball and also a look at the NBA draft hopefuls from the Gamecocks and Clemson. We got some important news about them today.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes here with you, 800-956-7266, where you can reach us on Sports Talk, which is brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Visit foundersfcu.com to see how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. One other baseball note we wanted to at least bring along to you is the fact that former USC catcher Grayson Griner has been called up to the Detroit Tigers and is on the active roster for the second game of a 4-game set for the Tigers in Kansas City. He will become, when he makes his debut, the 51st South Carolina player to play in Major League Baseball, and he's the 8th active player currently in the major leagues. He in 17 games with Toledo, the AAA affiliate of Detroit, 259 with 4 doubles, a triple, a long ball, and 7 driven in. This is a guy who was a big part of things for South Carolina kind of in the twilight of Ray Tanner's years, and obviously in the beginning of the Chad Holbrook era. A local product done well from Blythewood High School and pro. This is something where this can only continue to help South Carolina's efforts moving forward.
One of those weird guys who was a legacy recruit, but his dad played another sport.
Right.
His dad played basketball. He elected to play baseball. Real good with the pitching staff while he was here. You know, the guy that kind of could have the lighthearted conversation with one pitcher who needed it when he was struggling, and one he'd get in your face with the next guy. He just knew the personality of the pitching staff he was designed to talk to when he was calling the shots behind the plate.
Got the team to the 2012 College World Series Championship Series, and also the 2013 team to the Chapel Hill Super Regionals. So very much a part of the success for South Carolina. Again, the Gamecocks this weekend hosting Ole Miss. Clemson will begin a series tomorrow through Monday against Florida State. Got some news right before the show came on the air about where we will see players, or which players we will see rather, go to the NBA Combine. Of the 4 players from South Carolina and Clemson who did not sign agents, or sign with agents rather, and basically allowed the opportunity to possibly come back to school and forego the NBA draft, only one of those players is going to the NBA Draft Combine, and that is Brian Bowen. I think we all kind of expected that to happen when we found out that he was, again, testing the NBA draft waters, but no Chris Silva, no Marquise Reed, and no Shelton Mitchell. Now, just because they don't go to the NBA Draft Combine doesn't mean that they will automatically return to school. There have been players who have been drafted without the Combine, and just because you are in the Combine doesn't mean that you're coming out, and vice versa. So it's not like that's an end-all, be-all, but this is at least the first big indicator of kind of where the NBA feels your worth is, Pro.
And the other thing is, I'm trying to wonder, what are they leaning on with Bowen? I know he's a tremendously talented player,
right?
But is also the ledger leaning to them inviting him with the fact that they don't even know, and of course South Carolina doesn't know, if he's going to be declared eligible by the May 30th deadline. So it's good for him to at least get to the Combine, because he may not have any other choice when May 30th comes around, because it seems like the NCAA is just dragging their feet as far as making a decision on this kid.
He had 22 points per contest as a senior in Indiana. And, you know, the thing that I don't like, and again, this is part of what Condoleezza Rice's college basketball commission, part of what they're trying to help solve and what they're trying to do is that they're trying to start the dialogue earlier on a lot of these kids and kind of give them more of the information that they need in order to make an informed decision. Again, I don't know how the NBA Combine will allow that to happen, especially for a guy like Bowen, who really does not have a lot of options right now. His options are basically sit and wait for the NCAA or roll the dice and go to the NBA. And if I'm him, I don't want to wait around for the NCAA. I don't want to mess with it, especially if I'm getting good evaluations. If I'm being assured, and again, there is nothing necessarily known as being assured of being a lottery pick or being somebody who is part of that. But in my mind, if I'm getting all the indications that I'm either going to be drafted or at least somehow fairly compensated, I'm bolting. I'm gone.
Well, you know, the key thing with him is, and it's true of a lot of players, is you want to know how his game will translate to the NBA, because the one key point about him is you can almost look at this kid and say he's talented, but he's far from strong enough to deal with some of the contact, especially when you start to watch the playoffs and how they allow a lot of grabbing. And when you get to the hole, you know, it's every man for himself. It's some of that contact they let go in the NBA. And he's a kid, when you look at him, from all we've read and heard, he really would like to at least play college basketball for 1 year.
Right.
He's almost like not the kind of guy that's chasing the brass ring
He's
yet.
not. He's not. But I think the biggest thing is that he just wants to play.
Yes.
That's the thing. And he doesn't even know if he can at this point at the college level. And again, just from looking at his frame, I've we've been in the same room. I've seen him, we've obviously never seen him play collegiately. But just taking a look at him, I mean, he's wiry. He's like any rising freshman who probably needs a little bit of time in the weight room. You need to be able to figure out if he can take the kind of physicality that he will see in the NBA, because it's a different level that you'll see there versus the college game. I also think that part of that is part of the reason why Chris Silva did not get placed in the NBA draft combine. And I think, from that perspective, he needs to prove that not only can he withstand the kind of physicality that the NBA has, but also that he can't be tempted to put his hand in the cookie jar as he has so many times in South Carolina.
And of course, I think the other thing with Bowen, when you look at is he has what you would call, as you said, that young, wiry body, which tells me that a 6'7" to 6'8" Bowen may be drafted lower in the first round, but a proven Bowen 1 year in college who's grown another inch or two,
lottery
and
pick.
he comes out of there 6'9", 6'10", then you got a lottery pick, because he looks like the kind of kid who has not stopped growing yet.
Yeah, I don't think he's a lottery pick right off the bat.
No.
I think he needs some seasoning. It's a matter of whether or not he wants to take that seasoning, and whether or not the people who are around him make the right choice. Again, we went in last year. We had this back and forth last year about PJ Dozier, and you were very obviously cognizant of everything that went on with him and his knee that went down, and the fact that he didn't want to risk that. This is, I think, a different situation, because I think that there is more of a ceiling for Brian Bowen than there probably was for PJ Dozier.
Well, the thing about Bowen is, to me, just to look at the tape I've seen with his game translates to what the NBA is now.
Yes.
The only key factor you want to think about now is his shooting range.
Right.
Because at 6'8" or 6'9", and the way he handles the ball, and he seems to be ambidextrous at times,
yes,
this guy can be a guy who could play the point at some point. And anytime you see a guy 6'8", 6'9" that can handle the ball and set your offense, that creates so many other passing lanes that a guy 4 inches shorter just cannot create.
Well, you think about, I hate to make a comparison, but for a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, I mean, that's kind of the new ideal mold of player, somebody who has the frame, the length, the ability to handle the basketball, and the ability to do anything between driving it, pulling up, shooting from long range, being able to work off the curl. These are things that NBA GMs are looking for. That's why Michael Porter Jr. was so highly sought after out of Missouri, and why he, after only playing 2 games plus 2 minutes, just decided, you know what, I have enough of what I need from the college level to get myself forward. Even though my impression on the collegiate game wasn't necessarily a good one, there's enough working for me with my anatomy, if you will, that I can basically go to the NBA.
Well, the key point again is those players you talk about being versatile. See, for instance, if you to the compo you talked about, you put a faster guy on him, he's going to go into the low post and post him up. Then you bring a guy who is a comparable size but may not be as quick. He's going to take him out to the perimeter and just either drive by him or shoot over the top of him. So those are the type of guys who are very versatile enough that you can almost call them unguardable.
Certainly so. We will continue our discussion of not only the guys who are possibly checking out the NBA draft waters, but some college baseball. And Mike Morgan joins us next for Morgan on the Move. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. The Mike Morgan Report. Morgan on the Move is brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, the mortgage team more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process, whether buying or refinancing. Visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage to apply today. And by BP Skinner Clothiers in downtown Columbia. People nationwide get their custom-made suits and accessories from Brent Skinner, the best in suits, shirts, pants, shoes, and more available to you. Show up in the Vista or Brett will come to you to make an appointment. Visit bpskinnerclothiers.com to set up an appointment. Mike was just in my old college stomping grounds of Columbia, Missouri. We'll ask him about the team that will be here next week in a moment. But first, Mike, the Gamecocks have a statement series against Ole Miss. Have they been playing with too much fortune, or do you think that this recent run of theirs is for real?
No, I think it's for real. I think once they got healthy and then once they had kind of some confidence-building wins, they had to get mentally right. You know, I think it was really a twofold problem with that team going back to the start of conference play and maybe even towards the middle of conference play, where it was obviously the injuries were debilitating on offense. And I think there's still kind of that malaise that's been left over from the last couple of years, where it's a team that has not been able to win enough to get to the postseason. So they've had to kind of overcome that, hear a lot of the noise and just kind of block that out, just focus on what you could do to be good. And I think so far, Mark Kingston's done a great job of keeping them focused, and now they've got a lot more confidence. I'm expecting a very good series with Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is certainly one of the three most talented teams in the league, along with Arkansas and Florida. But the series is in Columbia, and you've got a red-hot team at home. So I think a lot of different things could happen, some of which would be very positive for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about Ole Miss because this looks like another one of those cases in baseball of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They get you in Oxford. They look like the juggernaut. They seem to be talent-wise, but they get on the road, it's a different story.
Yeah, and you could say the same thing about Arkansas for that matter. I mean, the only team that's been really consistent home and away is Florida, and they're number one in the country for a reason. But most of the teams, even the good ones in the SEC, have been very vulnerable on the road and have shown some inconsistencies and do have weaknesses. And again, I put Ole Miss in that tier 1, but when you look at tier 2, 4 through 10, there's not much difference between those teams, and they all have some work to do. So I think it's going to lead to what's going to be potentially a record-tying or even record-breaking amount of bids. The record's 10. I don't see the SEC getting fewer than 10. Potential's there for 11. They got a chance to tie the record for 4 national seeds, which has been done once by the SEC and once by the ACC. If you can get 4 in there, I think Ole Miss could very well be that 4th team. Georgia, who I just had last night, is battling for one of those spots as well. But look, it's a loaded league, but that doesn't mean there aren't teams with vulnerability. And certainly Ole Miss has some vulnerabilities away from home as well.
Mike Morgan joining us from ESPN and the SEC Network here on Sports Talk. Morgan on the move, his weekly visit with us. As far as from the Gamecocks' perspective, Mike, there's one thing that they've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, and it's these high-speed pitching machines that they've been taking on the road now recently, and he says that it keeps their Mark Kingston says it keeps their swings from getting long and things of that nature. Is that more of a psychological thing, or do you think that something like that can have a tremendous impact on the team?
Honestly, that's the first I've heard about that, and I can't think of another team that really does that on the road. Everybody's got the machines at home, but I think whatever you can do to mix it up, there's no question. Players, particularly young players, hit a wall this time of year. You're not playing 30 high school games. You're playing 56 college games, which take longer, the more grueling. Your bodies aren't really prepared for that in most cases. And even psychologically, I think there's a little bit of a wall there too. So for the younger players, I think you try to find anything you can. For the veterans, for some of those guys in the lineup who have tasted success before, you would think that they would be okay to handle that stretch. But at this point, whatever you're doing right now, whatever they are doing, just keep doing it, because obviously it's been working, and you've got guys that, again, were beaten down a little bit psychologically, I think, in recent years. Now all of a sudden they're playing with a lot more confidence, and if that's what it takes, sure. It's kind of like the old Bull Durham axiom. The rose goes in the front, big guy. Just wear whatever you got to wear, do whatever you got to do. If it makes you feel better about things, go ahead.
Interesting series coming up in the ACC beginning tomorrow as Clemson and Florida State play. Mike Martin, of course, I think in a flat-foot tie with Augie Garrido with 1,975 wins. And Clemson just taking aim at probably hosting, hopefully, a regional, and then, if they're successful, a super regional. Do you see the intensity pick up, Mike, once these teams finish exams and they can just stare at what's happening on the diamond?
Well, that is always a factor in baseball. And, when you look at college baseball, what they have to go through compared to some of the other student athletes, it's more games, it's more weekends, and it's exams. And it's more grueling travel, because football and basketball enjoy a life of charter flights and whatnot. That's not typically, you get 1 or 2 of those a year if you're baseball, and you got a lot of long bus rides, and most of those kids actually do value education, work hard, and have to study to make the grade. So I think whenever you can get over the exam hump, it's a deep exhale and relief for all those guys. There's no question about that. In terms of that series, I think it's a tremendous series. Clemson, to me, is in great shape in terms of hosting. Mm-hmm. I think they're playing for a top 8 national seed where they could host potentially a super. But I think overall Clemson's playing better baseball. Everybody's in love with the the Mike Martin story, trying to surpass Augie Garrido. And I'm sure they'll pick up at least one win, and that will happen. But I think it's easily one of the best series of this weekend.
Yeah, I'll be there for Game 1 tomorrow, Mike. It should be a lot of fun. Judging by what we will see next weekend for South Carolina, again, depending on what they do this weekend, will determine the importance of what they'll see against Missouri. You saw Steve Beaser's squad last night. How do they look?
You know, I think they are good on the mound. They are great in the field, and they are average at the plate, although they're heating up a little bit now that the weather has warmed up. I can't imagine having to play all those games in that cold weather like a program like Missouri does. Kentucky has to do it somewhat. Of course, all the Midwestern teams have to do that. But I think it's still a Missouri team that they played above their skis a little bit. It's not a great team. I don't think they're in the caliber of some of those other teams bunched up in that same tier, including a South Carolina, the way they're playing. But one thing's for sure, they do have some arms. And so you're not going to go there and just typically knock the ball all over the place. Last night, you know, their ace, Sycamore, got hit really hard. The slider was not working for him, and he got belted pretty good. But they've still got Platzmeyer, to me, is actually their best pitcher. He's their number 2 guy. They've got a good deep bullpen. So Missouri will certainly be a stiff challenge.
Lastly for you, we got about a minute, Mike. I just ask you simply, have the Braves arrived?
You know what? I think they have exceeded everybody's expectations, and I will certainly put my own in that mix. I've been talking about Ronald Acuna now for a year, so nothing he has done has surprised me at all. But the other, you know, Albies, what he has done, Freeman, we expect that from. Just some of the other guys, and then Newcomb is pitching really well now. Some of the young pitchers are coming around, and they're just, you know, doing just enough to win close games. They're doing a lot of the little things well. Also, it's not all stats for these guys in terms of how they're playing. How long they can keep it up, I don't know. I don't consider them a true postseason contender, but I know one thing: it gives you a great glimpse of how good the future can be next year.
Well, quickly, in Atlanta, what are they talking about more? Matt Ryan's new contract or the Braves?
Well, I think everybody knew Matt was going to get G'd up. So that's not the number might be a little bit of surprise, but more people right now are actually talking about the Braves up until football season.
Where are you this weekend if you have an assignment?
Well, I just got done in Missouri. I'm actually heading to Dallas for a game at Dallas Baptist, one of those little schools that continually causes havoc in the postseason. So I'll get a chance to see them up close and personal.
We'll be looking for you as always, Mike. Enjoy it, and thank you so much.
Will, Pro, appreciate it.
That's Mike Morgan joining us here on Sports Talk. Recruiting next. There could be a decision tonight for a very big Clemson target.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
We'll give you the Gamecock lineup. They're just taking the field right now at Founders Park, 7 o'clock start. TJ Hopkins starting in center field, leading off. Carlos Cortez in left, batting second. Madison Stokes is the DH, hitting third. Jonah Bride playing third base, hitting cleanup. Justin Rowe is at second, hitting fifth. LT Tolbert at short, batting sixth. Hunter Taylor hitting seventh and catching. Jacob Olsen is in right field, hitting eighth. Matt Williams is the first baseman. He'll at ninth. Logan Chapman on the hill for South Carolina. One thing, we were discussing this a little bit during the break. It was weird. Chris Cullen was looked at to be probably one of the key cogs in the offense for the Gamecocks, and he hasn't necessarily been getting his chances lately, and I'm seeing why. He's hitting 214. That's not favorable right there. And I feel bad for that kid just because, he's somebody who's kind of waited and bided his time. I know he's got a senior in front of him at catcher right now with Hunter Taylor, and the fact that they're using Stokes at first base and kind of going in between him and Matt Williams, kind of platooning in that way there. It's hard to crack this lineup now, which it wasn't usually earlier in this series.
But he's the type of guy that if you put him in there, he's going to do something for this team before it's all over. And those are the kind of guys you need who can come off the bench cold and provide you with a spark.
Look at the contrast in the last four series. They hit 248 against Kentucky. They hit 198 against Arkansas, both series losses. The two series wins over LSU and Vanderbilt, they hit 355 and 288. How crazy is that?
It's crazy, but as I said before, those three games, they got stellar pitching in Fayetteville. If they had the offense they have now with the healthy bodies and they had those pitching performances, we may have been talking about a sweep in Arkansas. But they couldn't put the two together.
They allowed 7 runs in 3 games against Arkansas and an ERA of 2.57. They allowed 7 total runs in the loss to Presbyterian just a couple of days after that series. So again, it for them has been a bit of a struggle, unfortunately, to try and get that consistency on both sides. We'll see if that plays itself out here this week. And again, no Clemson game tonight. They play the Saturday through Monday stretch against Florida State. That is in order to get the Monday game between Clemson and Florida State on national TV. A lot of people were asking about that, why that was the case, and that is personally why that is the case. Korn's recruiting report will be delivered by Surrogate today. That is yours truly, with Korn being off this afternoon. He did happen to give us some recruiting news and notes, and we'll pass those along to you presently. And the biggest note is that 6'10" Oral Roberts graduate transfer Javon White has told us that he will announce his destination either later on tonight or tomorrow. He is down to either Clemson or LSU. Now, this is the kid who, as a graduate transfer, he graduated early from Oral Roberts, and he has 2 years of eligibility remaining, and he is eligible immediately. This would be an amazing pickup for Brad Brownell. Amir Sims actually was on Twitter at our announcement. He basically liked our announcement about that with Javon White, and even put the little prayer emoji with the folded hands up. He said, please, please, please make that happen. So that's something that he is obviously keeping an eye on. We are keeping an eye on as well, and we should have at least a little bit on that. Again, Clemson, the fact that he's talking with us, too, is something that Korn has always said. The fact that he's talking with us means that you could probably give Clemson an edge, but at the same time, we do not know anything definitive between either of those things, whether he will sign with Brad Brownell or Will Wade's squad. But stick with Sports Talk on Twitter at SportsTalkSC and the hashtag STRecruiting over this weekend, and we will keep you updated on whether or not he does make a decision toward the Tigers or the Tigers. One of USC's top targets for D-end in this upcoming class, Joseph Anderson of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, 6'5", 245-pound kid. The Gamecocks are standing out to him along with Notre Dame, Ohio State, LSU, Arkansas, and Penn State. He's also visited Bama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. He's planning official visits to Arkansas, LSU, and Penn State. Does not have a leader, he says, but he would like to make his decision in midsummer before his season. He will sign and graduate early. So, again, he is a 2019 target for South Carolina, and, again, a big target on defensive end, a position of need for them in this upcoming class. USC has offered its 2021 quarterback, Preston Stone of Dallas, Texas. Others who have offered Georgia, North Carolina, Illinois, Baylor, A&M, Michigan, and others. Again, they already have a 2019 quarterback in Ryan Helinski. They're trying to get themselves ready for 2021. You recruit a guy in each class. You need to have somebody in each class at quarterback. It's the one position you recruit every class, but you don't necessarily play them. USC offered 2020 running back Tim Baldwin of Ashburn, Virginia, my old stomping grounds. He also has offers from BC, Maryland, Michigan, West Virginia, and also the Virginia Cavaliers, among others. 2021 athlete Eric McDaniels of Richmond was offered by USC as well. Richmond, Virginia, that is, the capital city of the Commonwealth. Clemson offered 2020 linebacker Jalen Harrell of Tampa, Florida. Clemson target offensive lineman Jake Hornibrook. His brother, of course, plays quarterback at Wisconsin. He was offered today by Tennessee. He's at the same high school of a place where Clemson recently also got a commitment from one of his high school teammates. So Clemson certainly trying to dissuade him from Tennessee by, of course, pulling him that direction as well. Clemson in the top 12 with defensive end Ryan Lewis of Florida. He is in a list, of course, among others, with Georgia, Oregon, Arizona State, Ohio State, NC State, Indiana, Bama, Texas, among others. Greenville quarterback Davis Bevel offered by Northwestern today. And the coach at Enloe High in Raleigh, this is a correction to something that we talked about earlier yesterday. The coach at Enloe High in Raleigh corrected a tweet by a staff member saying, while Clemson is very much interested in his defensive end, Christian Rory, the Tigers have not yet offered. They would like to visit. They like him to take an unofficial visit this summer. Clemson D coordinator Brent Venables was at his school on Thursday. He has offers from Notre Dame, North Carolina, NC State, Duke, Maryland, and Virginia. Clemson's Mike Reed was at Callaway, Georgia High Thursday to check in on offensive lineman Keandre Jones. And USC target athlete Jalen McCullough was offered by Virginia Tech today. Again, that is our recruiting report. You can see it online at sportstalksc.com and also on Twitter at sportstalksc. Just use the hashtag STRecruiting. If they get Javon White for Clemson, I mean, that's a kid who can play right away. That solves the conundrum at power forward for them. And I think, again, it is probably a conundrum just because you do not have Dante Grantham and no real heir apparent to that role, even though Amir Sims did show some flashes last year.
I think now we're coming to an era where I think that the teams that people normally don't think when they think basketball say, how can we make sense out of this recruiting malaise? Okay, we may not get the one and done. We may not get the 5 stars. But those guys who want to play in a top 5 conference, who are mature and can play right away, that's the minefield. That's the field we're going to be mining.
Well, this is not a route that Brad Brownell has been reticent to go on. He did it with Marquise Reed.
And they need to. I think they're the type of program that can really benefit, and it's shown already they can benefit from.
I mean, there's one thing to saying, hey, we want to develop our own guys. We want to try and take somebody who is a high ceiling and turn them into something. But on the other hand, let someone else do your dirty work for you. And again, let Oral Roberts get into, someone who has realized his potential. Let them kind of take the brunt of his lesser years, if you will, and then he graduates early. He's got 2 years to play. And if you get him on your campus, he's a starter. Yeah. I'm telling you, he's a starter. And, I mean, whether you put him alongside Eli Thomas or he goes in place of Eli Thomas, that guy is someone, while he's not necessarily a blue chipper or somebody who stands out in that regard, Clemson and South Carolina, they need bodies. They need immediately available bodies. He fits that mold.
Well, people have to also understand that how much he can be a benefit to an Elijah Thomas in practice every day. Because a lot of good teams, you notice that the guys sitting on the bench are good players, and they make the players who start better by challenging them.
Think about Justin Minaya, the way he basically had to go up against Brian Bowen in practice every day. Granted, he had hit the freshman ball by then, didn't necessarily have as much of an effect on him as South Carolina would have liked. But again, you see that uptick in practice, and that certainly changes things. Hour 1 of the books. We still have a lot to get to, including the spring recap from Louisville, a NASCAR look with Monty Dutton. We'll hear from Rusty Wallace as well, a conversation from earlier in the week that we wanted to play for you. But next, we'll look at what's going on at Quail Hollow with Birdies and Bogeys. George Bryan III joins us to start off Hour 2 of Sports Talk when we come back. South Carolina Radio Network.